I'm Gringo, a native Brazilian, and today I'm going to be answering the web's most searched questions about, you guessed it, Brazil. Is Brazil dangerous? Listen, that's going to have to be the classic yes and no. Brazil is extremely big, and there are some regions like the north and northeast that are traditionally more dangerous than others. It's really hard to generalize in that sense. Brazil is relatively safe for visitors and tourists. Scenarios that involve tourists are usually non-violent muggings or pickpocketings. But in most cases, tourists won't encounter any of that at all. When talking about big cities like São Paulo and Rio, of course you should take precautions on the street, especially after dark. That said, I think you should do that in a lot of the major cities around the world. You should be careful with your stuff anywhere you go, and Brazil is no different in that sense. When you live in Brazil, you start to understand your surroundings more. Some areas in any given city might be more dangerous than others. So you'd know, for example, to take an Uber instead of walking through a dangerous area. By the way, I'm a little out of breath because we are climbing to the most amazing view. Show you in a sec. Just as an example, I've lived in Brazil for about 25 years of my life, and I've only been mugged once. So if you're gonna spend a month in Brazil and you are careful, I really don't think there's a high probability of anything happening to you. So in conclusion, I would definitely recommend you visit Brazil. You will not regret it. The Brazilian people are very warm and welcoming, and you will no doubt see some of the most beautiful landscapes of your life. What do Brazilians speak? Listen up, Brazilians speak Portuguese, not Spanish. Is Brazil a Latin country? Brazil is indeed part of Latin America, but it's also completely unique to the rest of the region. So the first difference, of course, would be the language. While the rest of Latin America speaks Spanish, we are the only country on the continent to speak Portuguese. Another difference is that Brazil is incredibly vast and diverse, so we have many different cultures in our country. We also host the largest number of immigrants from many countries around the world, so Brazil is just one giant melting pot. On a global scale, Brazil also stands out from all the other countries in Latin America. It was the first country in South America to host the Summer Olympics, for example, which was here in Rio. And it's the only South American country in the BRICS emerging economies. It also has the largest GDP and population in South America. What is Brazilian funky? That's a good one. Brazilian funky, also known as funky carioca, which means here from Rio, is a hip-hop style derived from Miami bass and gangster rap.
Moyo tá calor.
Although it originated here in the favelas of Rio, it has become increasingly popular amongst the working class of all parts of Brazil. Here in Brazil, we just call it plain old funky. Although it does have an urban Afrobeats influence, it's very different musically from what is considered funk internationally. I'm talking about artists like James Brown, Earth, Wind and Fire, and Prince. It started becoming popular in the 80s with influences from such artists like Africa Bambaataa, but it very much remained a regional phenomenon until the very beginning of the 21st century. That's when the European media started reporting on its very peculiar combination of music, social issues, and very strong sexual appeal. No joke, some of these songs are raunchy as. Due to its very strong sexual nature, dance clubs in Eastern Europe, notably in Romania and Bulgaria, started playing Brazilian funky more and more. A dude by the name of DJ Marlboro was the first Brazilian act to do shows abroad and eventually start producing international artists. Since then, Brazilian funky has been spreading like wildfire all over the world and has been a huge influence to such famous artists like DJ Diplo and MIA. So, if you haven't heard it yet, go give Brazilian funky a listen today. Is Brazil a Western country? Wow, that's really a difficult one, and it involves a lot of like religious and ethnic factors that I'm not going to be getting into today. What I can say as a traveler, and I'm guessing a lot of you are probably interested in that perspective, is that while the Western world is comprised mainly of North America, Europe, and Australasia, Brazil in some ways can be considered a Western country when you consider a lot of its culture and traditions. If someone from the United States, for example, were to travel to Brazil, I believe they would feel less of a culture shock than they would in countries like China, India, or Vietnam. Some people might consider that any country that isn't Oriental is part of the Western world. So you know what? I'm actually going to throw this one to you. Let me know in the comments. Is Brazil a Western country or not? We're getting higher and higher, and I'm getting sweatier and sweatier. Hope you don't mind. What does Brazilian Portuguese sound like? Well, Brazilian Portuguese sounds something like this. Aqui no Gringo Nation eu quero te ajudar a encontrar sua liberdade através das viagens, para que você também possa viver uma grande aventura como eu tenho feito nos últimos 8 anos. Se você está curtindo o vídeo, deixe seu like para que o poderoso algoritmo possa o espalhar para mais gente. Muito obrigado. Am I going to make it to the top to show you guys what it's like? Stay tuned for that. But let me tell you, this is called Morro Dona Marta in Rio, and it's like a half-hour hike. Some steep parts like now, but pretty easy overall. Yeah, in about half an hour, you're up at the top, and it's an incredible view. On to the next question. I'll try to dry off until that. Who invented Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was developed around 1920 by the Brazilian brothers Gracie, when Carlos Gracie was taught traditional Kodokan Judo by a traveling Japanese man around 1917. Emphasizing the use of leverage and timing over strength and speed, Hélio Gracie modified all the techniques and through trial and error created what is now known as Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, or BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. All right, finally made it here to the top. Yes. Let's take a look here. Not a bad view, I must say, for the next portion of this video. Brazil borders how many countries? Brazil has boundaries with 9 other countries in South America that I've listed here below, and its coast spans about 8,000 kilometers. Brazil has how many World Cup titles? I am proud to say that Brazil has 5 World Cup titles. Germany and Italy take second and third place respectively with 4 wins each. I'm now going to take the opportunity to put down below one of the web's most searched questions about Brazil, but I don't really get it. It says Germany 7, Brazil 1? I don't know what that means. Let me know in the comments if you do. What is Carnaval in Brazil? Carnaval is an annual festival that occurs in Brazil around late February or early March, leading up to Lent. It's a massive celebration of music, food, drink, and almost every other pleasure that you could possibly imagine. It's definitely a huge deal for us Brazilians, and it's a national holiday. Because it occurs over the summer, the ambiance is perfect for that party time. Carnaval involves lots of parades and street parties. In São Paulo and Rio, the samba schools put on massive parades in huge arenas with elaborate floats and thousands of dancers. The tickets for that can be quite pricey though, and they sell out real soon. For those reasons, many Brazilians have never been to those events, myself included. But that certainly doesn't mean you're not going to be enjoying Carnaval. Those street parties are a whole different ballgame, and they happen all over Brazil. They're organized by specific groups called blocos, which comes from blocks, like block parties. And besides samba, you are going to hear tons of other musical genres as well. Sometimes during Carnaval, you'll see huge trucks with a big stage and speakers. Those are called trio elétricos, and they lead the celebration. During Carnaval, if you're in cities like Rio or São Paulo, you walk out into the street and you're already completely surrounded by Carnaval culture. I'm talking about people in costume, celebrating and drinking a whole lot too. All you do then is find a bloco to follow and buy some drinks from the street vendors, and whatever happens next is anyone's guess. Carnaval is celebrated all over Brazil, and besides Rio and São Paulo, you can also celebrate it in cities like Recife or Salvador. Many Brazilians would tell you that Carnaval is their favorite celebration or holiday out of the whole year, but because I've been traveling for the past 8 years, I really haven't had a chance to celebrate Carnaval in Brazil for a very long time, too long. And I'm sad to say that it's not gonna happen in 2022 either because of the virus that we don't speak of. Why do Brazilians say KKK? Okay, this is a very funny one that I really did not expect to see here at all. First off, let me make it very clear that Brazilians don't say KKK, they say KKK. In Brazilian Portuguese, the letter K is pronounced K, so Brazilians use the letter to laugh in text messages. Kind of sounds like a Popeye laugh, doesn't it? So instead of writing ha 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 or he he he, Brazilians might write KKKK. I myself find it extremely tacky and I wouldn't be caught dead doing it. In fact, I would consider it's a bit of a red flag. So be careful if you see a KKK. What is Brazil like? I could definitely try to explain to you even more what Brazil is like in this video, but that's exactly why I created this playlist where I travel around Brazil and show you a little more of what life is like around here. So just click on that playlist and I'll see you over there in 3, 2, 1.